Hello everybody, welcome back to another RCT2 reviews. This is part 2 of our Grand Tour Round 2 stream. If you missed the first stream, we are looking at New Elements Grand Tour Contest Round 2, which was Namibia themed. The idea with this one was to build a park themed to Namibia, which required a striking landscape feature and a coaster which followed the terrain. Aside from that, it was fair game to kind of do whatever. Last time we looked at entries 9 through 5 as far as the overall scoring went. So today we're going to look at entries 4 through 1. So let's jump right on in and start with number 4 here. This is Karivo Lodge. This is by ottersalad. So we start zoomed in like this, which is kind of a neat way to do it because when you zoom out, you can kind of see that this city turns into a little more rural and we get to our African lodge out here. But let's start in the city while we're here. Have some nice car movement here with the traffic. Nice kind of slow cruise along. Maybe a little faster would be good, but no real issues there. Kind of a nice bit of, I guess, crunch, as we've been saying, with some of the detailing here. The seams in the sidewalk and some other bits and pieces like that. A nice little pool here and a couple of houses along here. I really like this house and just kind of how well it's put together. Nice big security fence walls, I suppose. And then this pretty substantial, assuming hotel looking thing here, could be a municipal type building. Same thing with this one here. Relatively simple overall, I would say, but I think it's working well. Definitely has that European influence to those locations. But if we follow this road, take our corner here and come along, we'll start to see this road kind of fragment away, and we pass this guy here who's painting, which is pretty cool. We have the peep painter right here who's painting the coaster, as you can see come into view. So we'll follow this along and get here to the resort. So this is Karivo Lodge, and name of the park itself. So you have this little check-in desk here, and then we get to the lodge itself. So why don't we start with the coaster, just because that's the thing that I think a lot of us are here for. And let's check this out. It looks to be sort of a home-built coaster, which I like, using the Togo track and the Schwarzkopf trains. I'm a fan of that, and the layout kind of feels that way too. Nice terrain following layout. In general, I like it a lot. It's simple, but it does its job. We get this nice big drop off of the landscape hill here. Fast corner. And then some relatively fast hills just here in general. Helix here, pretty cool airtime hop underneath this landscape bridge. Larger airtime hill, and then these two helices at the end, bringing us into the brakes. See Blue Train here also waiting on the transfer track, which is a very nice little touch. Pretty substantial queue line here too. I have to wonder how many people this resort gets. But the station itself is quite nice. You have this African feeling wood peaked structure here, and then the metal roof painted orange, which is a nice change from the browns and the grays that you usually see, so that's always nice. And then mixed in here with the usual things you would expect from African architecture, so a lot of the wood, a lot of the thatch roofing, sort of an oasis feel here with the pretty lush landscaping that disintegrates out into the desert. So you have this lodge building over here with the pool on the side, and then a couple of little huts right here. Looks like almost cabanas of sorts. I assume there will be more of those kind of around in other locations here. But it looks like the real draw of the park here is the Safari Adventure, which has a couple of cool aspects to it. Pretty nice station here, and the Connex box here on the side, so a little bit of detailing in there. And then here we come on through the entry gate into the savannah area, I suppose, with the elephants and some of the other creatures as it goes along. And then presumably this goes quite a bit further out and about into the landscape, so we only get a glimpse of what's going on here. A nice fence along the whole thing, and just simply detailed. Again, doesn't have to have a lot. I like what's going on here with this sort of kind of worn patches as things go along, so I think that's a good look. And then a nice mix here of just rides and like the safari attraction, and then sort of other things you would typically see in a resort. So this little pool clubhouse type thing, these little huts of some sort, which I kind of like, and it's got those little parts and pieces that are run down, but it's still, you can kind of tell it's a decently quality resort, which I like. So definitely a cool coaster. Like I said, it's simple, but I'm a big fan of it, to be honest. Um, and it sits against the landscape well. I like the red rock and the red sand on this mountain, kind of makes it stand out here among the rest. And the sparseness of this whole area here, how the road sort of weaves its way along here, and then you also have the poles here with the power lines coming into town that slowly start to sag and drag here a little bit as you go along. So definitely a really cool entry. I think Otter did a very nice job on this one, and was definitely a surprise to see it, and a welcome surprise at that. So congratulations on the 4th place here. Let's jump into number 3. So this is Fish Canyon Corkscrew by inthemanual and FK. So we're struck here pretty immediately by the coaster itself, since it's about the only thing here with color that stands out. I'm here dropping off of that lift hill into the loop. Fast corner here, drop underneath that bridge into a batwing element of sorts. A mid-course brake run. Slowly coming off of that. Then into a helix before we dive down through a double corkscrew finale. Here we go. 1 and 2. And then into the brakes. So let's take a look here a little bit closer, because it takes a little bit on first hand. You don't have a whole lot of color here or dimension, but when you dig into it just a little bit further, you can kind of see how this landscape is put together with this canyon here using these rock walls. Definitely a bold move for those rock walls. It's not an object that often looks very good in the game, but I think it was achieved rather well here, at least from the blending standpoint. I think my only comment would be just the contrast is sometimes a little bit hard to read as far as the elevation change goes and things like that. We do have this other secondary ride here that's pretty cool swing, the custom swing that kind of swings out over top of this canyon, which I like. And then you can kind of see down here also there's these sort of moving granular pieces. Hopefully you can see that on the video, but it gives a nice little bit of movement to those areas, kind of shifting sands or perhaps. Architecture-wise, there's not a whole lot, but it's like we said before, the sort of typical traditional African theming that you might come to expect. So thatch roofs, this sort of worn rubble rock walls, and then some other wood. Pretty sparse landscaping, but I think it's done really well. I do like this use of these sort of dead trees here. Some of the some of the little foliage elements. And then we come over here to the our little restaurant here. So this is the Grill Master, and you can see the people here are seated around underneath the various canopies, and the fire here in the middle, which I assume is where everybody's cooking the meats and bringing them over to the various groups. This is a pretty cool take on a restaurant, and I like it a lot. It feels very almost kind of adventure-like, I suppose. We have one more, a little more traditional type building over here, and then another flat ride here. So this scrambler on that side. Let's jump back to the coaster for a minute and take a look at a couple of things. So first of all, the queue line has a pretty interesting climb up and over this corkscrew. So the corkscrew actually goes down into the canyon and also rolls underneath of the the queue line and then rolls over top of the queue line. So a pretty cool look there. Definitely a good design. Crosses the canyon in a couple of spots here, but does not put any footers down into the canyon. So we have this nice bridged piece of monorail track here that's kind of a beefy support, and then same thing with the lift hill, this nice arch support here. I'm a big fan of the extended spine on the curve here, and then kind of how well this is set up across the canyon on this side. So it's positioned really well across from this bridge, kind of looking out into it. Great shot there if you were standing on that bridge. And I also like this little boardwalk area here where it wraps around this support, kind of like the support was already there, and then this little boardwalk bridge of sorts was kind of built there to fit around it. Um, but you know, it's a good showing of how sparse landscaping can actually work really well. Um, I think the only complaint that I would have potentially is that a little more definition to the canyon would potentially help, because you kind of have your main canyon here, and then you have a couple of these side ones. I'm almost sort of looking for that main canyon to be more kind of in your face a little bit and celebrated, rather than underneath of all these things. You get a lot of nice interaction with it, of all the things going over top, but I almost kind of miss it in a couple of ways. And I really like the design of the canyon. It would be neat to have that sort of at the forefront. Um, of the space. But you know, on the whole, very nicely done, a very good design, and definitely a worthy third place entry, I believe. All right, so let's jump across to number 2. So this is I Have Namibia. This is by AvanineCommuter and Tolsimir. And this is one heck of an entry. So check this out. First of all, you have your overall shape of the map that sort of has this eye shape here with the blue water being the iris and everything. But let's check this out, because there's a lot to see. First of all, we get down here to our kind of white desert, like we've seen in some other entries, with these cool rockwork formations, the sculptural things from, I guess, the native peoples. But you're working along this big cliffside that comes all the way down, and a nice custom palette that really makes that red sand turn a little more orange, which I think is pretty cool. Let's take a look at this wooden coaster. This thing is massive, huge, huge coaster. A couple layers here with the mine train track as well. But let's take a look at this thing, because it's huge. Got this great first drop, and then coming back up and over the lift hill here for the massive second drop, the biggest one. Wrapping around, up and then back into this tunnel. Cruising around the backside here, and then coming back around. Above and through that open air station. And the looping around as well here. Then comes back on itself through some of these tunnels. Up and into the brakes. And I love this flat corner here as it comes back over to the station. So wow, this is pretty impressive. I think for me, the thing that I'm a biggest fan of is this kind of open air station that works on a couple of different levels. So you have this kind of flat section here that's hanging over top of the canyon edge, transitions down with these kind of evacuation type stairs, I assume. And then also this kind of upper level that has a curve to it, and then over top of that, you have all these different forms of architecture sticking out from the top of it. So you have this nice stone structure that pops out on the top here, and then these other 2x2 structures that kind of pop out over top of the other bits. So it's a little bit hard to almost read the building as a whole, but just looking at the way that it kind of rises up on that side, and then on this side it also works really well, because you have this great row of awnings here working up to this structure here with the thatch, and then these other two kind of major kind of icon elements, these towers. So it's pretty darn cool. And then the queue line itself wraps all the way around to these different areas. Over on this side, we've got this scrambler that's kind of way off here in the corner, so you really wouldn't even know it's there until you got into the queue line and onto the ride. But it's a pretty cool location with the coaster screaming around it, and then also looking out across this impressive looking desert. Which, by the way, I love how the little road lines here in white are scattered all around to stand off against the crazy paving in white also. So it really looks like this crackled, rocky, almost salt-like appearance. Really, really well done. So this queue line kind of pokes its way out and back into the mountain in a couple of different spots along here. Great little structures throughout. And then onto the main side here, onto the main pathway, you've got this pretty worn pathway throughout, transitioning into a couple of different colors, a couple of different textures throughout. All these super cool little buildings and structures. Super, super detailed. I think this is one of the more detailed entries that we've seen. And it keeps on coming once you get to this side too. So we've got this great Ring of Fire ride that has these the kind of flames coming up from it, which are the chairlift cars actually on a custom track, and just I've never seen this trick done, and it is so cool. Really neat to watch. It just feels so natural the way that they kind of float up and out and then disappear off to the side. So definitely really cool there. And then we jump on down and we have this really great queue line that goes into this building up here up above, and over here to Vulture, our wing coaster. Let's take a look at this one because this is super impressive. You can see the vultures here up above circling, and there's this great rock work here, this almost kind of Pride Rock-esque structure that comes on out. Let's watch this coaster here as it goes through the ribbing of this elephant graveyard. The big launch up into this roll that puts it up on top of the cliff. Second roll here, wrapping around to this big vertical drop. A loop. Then working up, down, and around on the cliffside and off of the cliffside in a really nice manner. And I will say the supports on this are done super well. They're very clean, very simplistic, but they get the job done. Kind of final dive in there and final helix as it comes into the brakes on that side. So let's admire this elephant here for a minute with the tusk coming out and the ribbing that comes on the side there acting as the station. Super cool, and just really detailed, really clever, lots of fun. So then as we move along, we have our fairy ring over here set inside the this kind of lush brush around it. And you have this stone circle here up above that hides this other little ride here, this Namibia Pottery Company that we're about to look at. And then too, just looking at the flamingos here around this kind of center lagoon, which really the whole park wraps its way around this lagoon. And it does a nice job to sort of frame the rest of it and offer a little bit of brightness compared to everything else, which has these super warm, super dark colors. So you really have this great blue here in the middle with the kind of lighter landscaping, and then the white down at the bottom, and framing all the rest of this. It's just done really well. Well, let's turn around and take a look at the Namibia Pottery Company ride, which is a lot of fun. It's a sort of a hidden thing here that you don't see it until you rotate the map around to check it out. But we've got all these gears here down below as the ride sort of wraps its way around in a couple of different ways here, and then ends up running here into the furnace, or wrapping around to kind of head on back up to the top. Delete some scenery here for just a minute so you can see that we're going to lose a lot of frame rate, but still that's a pretty cool design, and a really clever little thing. You can kind of zoom in here and see some of the detailing here with the little chimneys and this African patterns and the stacked pots and everything. Really well done. So here actually it's going to drop over onto this side. I think we might be able to see one come out at some point in here. I love the waterfall coming down here, kind of running all these gears and everything, and then you have the frozen staff down here, the potters that are kind of doing their work throughout, and then the crane here that lifts up the pottery and everything. So, I mean, suffice to say, lots and lots of really cool details in this map, and just a lot of things to explore, a lot of things to look at, which I'm a big fan of. I love how this ride here kind of wraps around these different areas, stops, and then goes back. It's a lot of fun little back and forth reverse merges, which is a clever way to do that, and a neat, fun little adventure ride, which I've said before, I'm a huge fan of kind of non-coaster adventure rides that really kind of add something different and have a lot of creativity. And I think it's pretty clear there's a ton of creativity here for this whole thing. Two really great coasters, and some incredibly detailed architecture and theming throughout. This was going to be super hard to beat, and it narrowly finished second behind Ombezi Basin National Preserve by InCities, Josh, and Coaster Creator 9. And like I said, it had to be something pretty substantially cool to do better than that. And we got that in this guy, which on the surface may not look quite as detailed or as fully fleshed out as the Eye of Namibia entry, but in my opinion, this entry sort of redefines landscaping in RCT just as a general term. Um, super cool, super well done, and incredibly detailed. So before we even go see the coaster, let's take a look here as we get into uh, the main space here. So this was the National Preserve. This was Ombezi Basin per the name of the map. So we have this National Preserve tours, this ride here that the guests are all queuing up for through this nicely themed area. We have our main lodge structure here as you first walk in. Really like this steep sloped thatch on the whole thing, and the way that there's this kind of raised walkway out here over to this viewing area and some other buildings here. So you can see all the flamingos out here. Lots of different colors. The custom palette here is done really well to transition through all these different colors, from this red to the orange to the tan, a bunch of these shades of brown and the darker brown here, all the way into the water. You can follow this vehicle as we go along. This cool rock here with the tree sticking out of it, and the entry sign. Love this this front gate here too, the guard shack in the wall. So we'll come across here and cross this bridge, and right next to it is the suspended little pedestrian bridge too, which I think is very well done. Then over here we have this little fort of some type, sort of European embassy-looking building, that very stately with the white against the color around it. I really like how saturated this green is. Very dark, very kind of lush. It works incredibly well to offset the colors of everything else. And so we get over to here where, I'll pull away these dialogue boxes. This barely even feels like RCT at this point to me, with the textures and the colors and the lines, all the animal scenery pieces kind of stuck through there, and the way that the trees are clumped together. Using some pretty bold choices of trees here, things that wouldn't necessarily look good on their own or in a lot of situations in the game, but used really well to advantage in this location. And then just the textures and the way that everything is blended together. There's some pretty substantial sand hills here with the red sand, and the rock work is used sparingly, I guess I would say, and I think to good measure, because it offsets the rock work here that's done almost more heavily. We cross here, this great little bridge. There's another area with some other animals and things. And we'll wrap around here, go underneath this kind of overhang in the rock work. It's a little hard to read scale on these, as we said with the last one, but I think it's done pretty well here. I don't really have too much as the way of complaints. Love this bridge. Love the vehicle-specific bridge here as it comes across. And we come back to the starting point. So pretty cool how it all fits on one map here. Just this big loop around the preserve, but just so detailed for this whole thing. So then there's also the coaster, which I think kind of plays second fiddle to the rest of the landscape and just how well put together the rest of the map is. But let's take a look at this. So this is Expedition Kommandskap. Have our train here getting ready to go after next one coming along. This is running 3 trains. And there's 2 separate lift hills here, as you can see. A pretty long ride, but has some pretty nice support work. Kind of feels like an maybe not necessarily an Arrow mine train, maybe something more of a in-house design, but could very well be something that you could see from Arrow. Great lattice supports, though, on the whole thing. And then just the way that it's working in and around the landscaping is incredibly well done. Alright, so I'll pull this out a little bit because it's a little bit hard to see the way that this kind of works around. We're going to spin around a little bit here, and we'll have to look underground here for a minute. But we get this great first drop, huge drop down over top of the river. Then we're going to pick up some speed here, cruising along at 50 miles an hour around these really fast corners. Be a little too fast, but can't complain too hard about it. And as we go across and underground, so we're going to lose some frame rate here, but check this out. So there's a nice curve here and a couple little airtime hills and then a brake run underground. Maybe a little bit too much underground. I don't know if there was an intention to do some cutaway view at some point for that, into sort of these caves, perhaps they might be. But a little bit much for what it stands right now. But then you get the second lift hill, and I love this, the crossing between the two different pieces of track. And here's our second half. Get this nice little drop before it drops off of the mountain right into this helix and wraps around the Q buildings. And I have that nice varied color here, so the rusting metal roof, I suppose. A couple more underground sections before it curves back around and into the brakes. Granted, a little too short of a brake run and other things like that when you look at realism and everything, but on the whole, I think done pretty well. And definitely I think the big winner here is just the landscape in general. Love this the hippo here as it's moving around, so that's a cool little touch, and just all the details and everything. Here's an alligator or crocodile, I guess, hidden underneath this tree right here is kind of claiming this truck back to nature, and all these little details, and just the van stopped here, and sorts of parts and pieces. There's just a lot of little details to explore. In my opinion, this is probably the best entry that we've seen so far in the contest. Granted, we're only in round 2, but having seen round 3 and 4, and now 5 actually, I think this may still be one of my favorites. That's not to say the rest of the quality isn't there too, but this one just, in my opinion, it really shows a new way to do landscaping, to do texture blending and colors, and is just incredibly well done. I kind of can't get over looking at this. I mean, it's just a very beautiful look. Certainly makes RCT feel more like an art form than anything else, but incredibly well done. Lots of good stuff to see here. I definitely implore you to check out the download of the park and explore it for yourself, just because I think there's a lot to sit and enjoy about this one. But that is number 1 and the winner of New Elements Grand Tour Round 2. So that was 9 great entries, and as we move along, we're going to have even more for the next round, which is micro states. So micro parks, little tiny parks with a lot of detail within. So we'll check those out here in some upcoming videos. But hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, definitely check that out, and you can get notifications whenever I go live. We will continue through the rest of these rounds and start to pick up on some other park reviews also in the future. We've gotten a little bit behind on some of those, but we will certainly endeavor to keep up and keep catching up where we can. But hopefully you enjoyed these parks and the parks to come. So until next time, thank you guys very much for watching, and have a great day.